I am Daisy, as Naz said. So I am going to be speaking about the power of authentic friendships in a divided world. That's a long title, but really it's just some of my thoughts and musings over the last 7 months of working in politics and living in community and just having friends in general. Just some thoughts that I've had. So I don't think I'm going to be saying anything particularly new or shocking, but just hopefully some food for thought for you this evening. So to start, I'll kind of talk a bit more about my work as we go through, but what is the state of play at the moment in this country in terms of friendship? At the end of that title, we've got divided world, and I feel so sick of hearing that because it's all the time. We live in such a polarized world. We're so divided. We're so lonely. We've got cancel culture, and I don't know about you, but for me, I'm just surrounded by that narrative all of the time. And it is true. It is something that we are living in, and the effects of it are real. We live in a society where people just don't know how to have a conversation with each other. They don't know how to have honest, vulnerable conversations about their thoughts and opinions on difficult topics. And that's a really big issue. To the point where, I found this stat earlier from some of the research that we're doing at work, that the majority of people in the UK, so 58%, say they usually find themselves stopping themselves from expressing their political, social or religious views for fear of judgment or negative responses from others. That's a lot of people. That's over half of the population who don't talk about what they want to talk about and their own opinions. So somehow we've got a minority voice who is louder, who is leading the conversation, which I just thought was really interesting when we live in this kind of polarized space. Everything is very black and white. There's not a lot of room for nuance. There's not a lot of room for going either side of the debate. It's pick a side and tell me what side you're on, and then I'll decide if I'm going to be your friend, and we'll go from there. And I think for Christians in the room, I don't know if everyone is Christian here, but that's a very difficult space for us to be in, because we do have a nuanced voice. We do have something that's not just black and white. There's something that cuts in between and rides above these narratives of yes or no. And I was thinking, and this is sort of the work that I do in my job, is look at kind of what are the symptoms of this culture that we're living in, and what can we do about that. And the symptoms are really scary, because it's not just, we're cancelling celebrities for saying things that we don't like to hear, and it's not, let's not talk about Brexit or controversial topics or things that are just really divisive. Because of this breakdown of communication and breakdown of community and friendship, families are breaking down. Half of children, I read today as well, in the UK are growing up in a single parent household. Year by year, there's a steady decrease in marriages. People are really lonely. 45% of people in the UK say that they feel lonely, which is half this room, which is horrible. And I'd hate that if anyone of you felt like that. But they say they feel lonely. And the studies unanimously show that loneliness is more detrimental to your health than smoking, than obesity. It gives you greater risk of heart disease and dementia, and it leads to the mental health epidemic that we've got in this country as well. Addiction and suicide rates through the roof, 20% increase over the last 15 years. It's just astronomical. It's so much. And not to just keep going on how depressing the state of play is, but just that is where we're at, and that is the kind of picture and narrative and story that we're living in this country, and just generally in the West as well. And we're also just seeing it in governance, in politics. People don't have integrity. There's no character that we're seeing in our day-to-day viewings of leaders on TV, in the news. It's not just politics, but it's obviously a main one. but we're just seeing a total lack of integrity and charity in people. And I think, this is something I've been thinking about a lot, is that at the root of this, we've lost the memory and we've lost the idea of what Christianity has brought to us as a country. And more so, and just as a fruit of that, we've forgotten that we belong to one another, and we've forgotten that we have something to give to each other, and that we belong to something bigger than ourselves. Christ's mission was founded on and flourished through his friendships. I don't need to say any more on that, really. Like, he lived with his disciples, he prayed, he spent his everyday life with them, he shared grief, he shared joy, he shared all of those things with his friends. And the whole gospel is him and his friends. And it's just such a core of what we believe as Christians. And as we've walked away from that as a society in the UK and elsewhere, we're seeing these effects on society in way bigger ways than we thought we probably ever would. So, friendship. What am I going to say about it? That's what I want to say. I just want to make the case this evening for the need to bring it back in a big way. There's something so much bigger than ourselves that we're being called into, and it's often messy and it's not comfortable and it's scary, but we're being called out into something way bigger. And I don't want to speak about this like fluffy idea of being friends and like all getting on really nice. Yeah, sure, like that's a start, but we've got this culture of tolerating people, and that we think that's okay. And I just want to say, I just don't think that toleration has got us anywhere. I think that, in fact, it's below the baseline of where we should be as people and as citizens, as Christians. Toleration is not doing anything for us, and it's seen as this virtue, like I tolerate this person over here because they've got their belief and I've got mine, and then we'll just keep our separate ways. But what it's actually taught us to do is to isolate ourselves. It's taught us that we don't have to wrestle with things that are uncomfortable to us, and it's trained us as a people to keep people at an arm's length and say, you do you and I'll do me, and we'll just stay here. And in theory that sounds nice. It sounds like we are all getting along, just cracking on, but there's just something so special and so unique that's missing in that toleration that we're just holding on to. We're being called, as I said, into friendship with another, genuine love of another person. We're not called to be these people that hold people at an arm's length and say, you do you and I'll live my life. We're being called to reach out to that person, draw close, bear trials with them, go through joys, go through life with them, be patient, listen, and live with that person in friendship. And it's really ironic that I'm talking about this because I'm talking about authentic friendship, and my job, I'm basically paid to be people's friend and to make loads of friends. So I don't know if I'm the best person to be talking about this, but these people aren't paying me to be their friends. It's other people paying me to make other friends. So I think I can get away with it somehow that I'm being authentic somewhere in there. But basically what I do in my job is I create communities of people around topics that are important to us as an institute and for me personally. And I try and basically create big groups of friends to make big changes of people that care. A lot of the people that I work with are Christians, but there's also non-Christians that I work with as well. And we really base ourselves on people that have made significant changes in history throughout the rest of the world. And one of those that we speak a lot about is William Wilberforce. And some of you may know his story, some of you may not. But William Wilberforce is most famously known for abolishing slavery in this country. And he was a man of conviction. He was a man of courage. He went through a lot to get this done. But something that I think is really missed out of the story a lot is that he was a man of deep friendship and community with others. And he lived in Clapham in London and was part of the Clapham sect. And essentially, this was a group of evangelical Christians who lived together, they prayed together, they made a decision together that they were going to end slavery, and they lived life together. They looked after each other's children, they drank beer, they ate, they had joys, they lived life as friends. And through that, they did it through campaigning, they did it through prison reforms, they did it through so many different things. But I think the main thing that they did it through was the fruit of their friendship. And I think that their love for each other as a friendship group, which sounds, again, like this fluffy, like, oh, there's a friendship group. But they lived together and they did it and they committed and they managed to abolish slavery in this country, which is mammoth. And it wasn't about William Wilberforce getting the credit for it. It wasn't about who was going to get this amazing thing done and change the world. It was about a group of friends who said, we're committing to this because we care about each other, we care about developing each other, but we also care about reaching out and helping those who are treated with no respect and no dignity at all. I just want to go to this C.S. Lewis quote that I really like. And he says about authentic friendship that, hence true friendship is the least jealous of loves. 2 friends delight to be joined by a third, and 3 by a fourth. If only the newcomer is qualified to become a real friend. In this, friendship exhibits a glorious nearness by resemblance to heaven itself, where the very multitude of the blessed, which no man can number, increases the fruition which has of God. For every soul, seeing him in her own way, doubtless communicates that unique vision to all the rest. So a lot of words that C.S. Lewis is saying, but I think in my head when I read that quote, the image I have is in heaven, all of the saints around, and it's just multiplying by the minute. It's just like this army of people who are just exploding by the second, inviting people into this massive communion of friendship. And I think that's kind of how I hope and try to do my work in my day-to-day job. And I'm seeing that the power that it has when I do that. Basically how it works is we have our different projects, we have our different things that we want to change, and monthly we get together and we share our lives, share updates. Usually someone's had a baby or someone's got married or someone's got a new dog. So we just share the general day-to-day life, and then we strategize, we come up with plans that are going to just tackle the world, and then we eat together, we drink wine, we meet each other's families, we commit to each other for the sake of us as individuals and then for the sake of the cause as well. And then at the end of that we say, who needs to be in the room, who else needs to be friends and part of this club. And month by month the armies are growing and people are no longer isolated in their jobs. A lot of people that I work with are civil servants or people in government, and they feel like they're the only ones with a certain view and they're the only ones that can speak about a certain thing. And when I first meet them, they're usually just like at a place where they're so afraid that they're going to quit because they just feel that they can't do it anymore. And so that they come into this community and they feel empowered, they feel emboldened, they feel that they're not on their own and they can do the things that are scary that we're called to do, and that they feel convicted to do as well. And not like William Wilberforce, I don't live with these amazing lawyers, journalists, MPs, whoever, but somehow we've made a commitment to each other. I'm just a nobody in my office, I'm just inviting people in. We've made a commitment to love each other and to go through the ups and downs of trying to get things done. And I think that's the power of authentic friendship. And I think it's an antidote to the culture that we're living in. The symptoms of malaise that we're seeing, that is what is going to pierce through and change things. I'm already at 14 minutes, so I'm just going to go a little bit on. Let's see. Okay, so to kind of bring this into everyday life, power of authentic friendships, what does that mean in practice? I think I've probably painted like a somewhat rose-tinted version of, oh, let's all be friends and change the world. And I think we know that the reality is that it's not usually that nice, and living in community is hard because you're confronted with the things that you don't like about yourself and the things that you don't like about other people. And I think the challenge is to go beyond the people that we know and trust and that we want to be around, to go and reach out and have authentic friendships with the people that have radically different views to ourselves, politically, socially, religious views, whatever it is. And I think that I've seen the most power. I've seen amazing things happen through friendship groups and of people committing to one another to do something big. But the biggest amazing thing that I've seen is when we've made friends with people on the other side that we just never thought we could ever be friends with. There's something very, very extraordinary that comes when we meet and collaborate with those that we really thought we could just never even associate with. We've been reading a book together called 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Would very much recommend. It's like such a classic personal development book, but I'm a sucker for one of those and would recommend if you like that sort of thing. But one of the chapters is on synergy, and what that means is that 2 heads are better than 1, basically. It's about creative cooperation with other people. It's about teamwork, open-mindedness, and just having an adventure with people to find solutions to problems that you never thought you'd be able to solve. And the thing about synergy is that it says that we're better as a whole. The idea is that the whole is better than the sum of its parts. So I am better off with someone that I really disagree with and really don't understand where they're coming from, but working with them, like leaning in, digging deep, trying to build a friendship with that person. Something greater is going to come from that than I could have ever done on my own, and with the friends that I just am comfortable with sharing my beliefs and views on. So, to wrap this up, what does this require of us? It requires a lot, and it's not nice, and it requires a lot of grit and determination, but it's so worth it. So, just some off-the-cuff ones. Radical humility. We've got to just be okay with putting getting our point across to the side. It requires genuine, authentic friendship with that person, listening to them, understanding them, willing the good of them, wanting them to get to heaven, wanting them to fulfill their potential and be amazing in their own right. It requires patience, it requires showing up, and it requires a constant disposition of knowing that we've got something to learn from someone else. Valuing the differences and really leaning into authentic friendship with people that we don't necessarily agree with is what is going to change the world. And I'm convinced of it, and my encouragement to you is just to lean into that as we go into this next stage in history, in this life. So I'm just going to wrap up there, but I guess one point for discussion is, how do you find that? Do you lean into friendships with people that you really disagree with? Or do you stay safe and comfortable with the people that make you feel good and that you enjoy being around? Yeah. Cool.